Elena stared at the monitors showing Colonel Harrison's forces positioned around Raven's Hollow estate, her mind racing through possibilities that seemed to grow more desperate by the minute. But 20 years in the Royal Guard had taught her that the most impossible situations sometimes contained hidden opportunities for those brave enough to see them. "Your Highness," she said quietly, "I have an idea. But it's going to require you to trust me completely, and it's going to put you in considerable danger." Prince Marcus looked up from the security feeds he had been studying. "Captain, I'm already in considerable danger. What do you have in mind?" Elena moved to the tactical display that showed the estate's layout and the positions of both her teams and the hostile forces. "Colonel Harrison's people are positioned to contain us, not to storm the vault. That suggests they want to avoid damaging the treasures or harming you. But it also means they're spread thin trying to cover every possible escape route." "You're thinking of a breakout," the Duchess said with obvious skepticism. "Captain, even if your teams could punch through their perimeter, they have helicopters and roadblocks for miles in every direction. You'd never make it to friendly territory." "I'm not thinking of a breakout," Elena replied. "I'm thinking of bringing friendly territory to us." She activated the estate's communication system and began entering coordinates that she had memorized during her initial mission briefing. "Your Grace, how quickly can your estate's communication array reach the Royal Military Academy?" "The Academy?" "Within minutes, assuming they're monitoring emergency frequencies." "But, Captain, what exactly are you planning?" Elena pulled up personnel files on her secure tablet, scanning through information she hoped was still current. "Prince Marcus, do you remember Colonel Saracen from your military training at the Academy?" Prince Marcus's face lit up with understanding. "Saracen. She was my tactics instructor for 2 years. Brilliant officer, completely loyal to the crown, and she has access to the Academy's Rapid Response Battalion. More importantly," Elena continued, "she has no connection to the palace political structure. If Lord Chancellor Hawthorne has compromised communications within the royal court, Colonel Chen would be operating independently of his influence." Elena began composing an encrypted message while she spoke. "I'm going to contact Colonel Chen directly and request immediate military support. But here's the critical part, I'm not going to tell her we have the crown treasures here. I'm going to tell her that Prince Marcus is being held hostage by unknown forces claiming to represent the Regency Council." The Duchess understood immediately. That would bring military intervention without tipping off anyone who might be monitoring palace communications. "But, Captain, it also means Colonel Chen's forces would be coming in blind, not knowing the true situation." "Which is exactly what we want," Prince Marcus said with growing excitement. "If Colonel Chen arrives believing I'm being held against my will, she'll engage Colonel Harrison's forces as hostile enemy combatants. The confusion should give us the opportunity we need to determine who has legitimate authority and who doesn't." Elena finished composing the message and looked at her companions. "Before I send this, you both need to understand what we're risking. If Colonel Harrison really does have legitimate authority from the Regency Council, we're about to start a firefight between two branches of the royal military. If I'm wrong about this, we could be responsible for a disaster that destroys the kingdom's unity." Prince Marcus studied Elena's face for a long moment before responding. "Captain, in the past 6 hours I've learned that my father is in critical condition, that someone I trusted may have betrayed the crown, and that the future of the kingdom depends on decisions I'm making in an underground vault while surrounded by hostile forces. Under these circumstances, I'm willing to trust your judgment about how to proceed." Elena sent the encrypted message to Colonel Chen at the Royal Military Academy, then immediately began coordinating with her teams for what was about to become the most complex operation of her career. "All teams, this is Captain Blackwood. We have friendly forces en route to assist, ETA 30 minutes. Your orders are to maintain defensive positions until the relief force arrives, then be prepared to coordinate with friendly elements to neutralize the surrounding hostiles." The response from Sergeant Peterson came back immediately. "Captain, what friendly forces? I thought we were operating independently." "Things have changed, Sergeant. I'll brief you on the details once the immediate situation is resolved. For now, just be ready to identify targets and avoid friendly fire incidents."
Elena turned back to Prince Marcus and the Duchess.
Now comes the dangerous part. Colonel Chen is going to want to verify that you're safe and that my assessment of the situation is accurate. That means Prince Marcus needs to be visible and able to communicate freely when she arrives. You want me to leave the vault, Prince Marcus said with understanding. I want you to be in a position where Colonel Chen can see that you're not being held against your will, while also being close enough to the vault that we can protect the treasures if this goes badly. The Duchess activated another bank of monitors that showed the estate's upper floors. There's a reinforced observation room on the second floor with direct sightlines to the main courtyard. Prince Marcus could be visible from there while remaining in a defensible position. Elena studied the layout carefully. That could work. But we'd need to move through the main house, and Colonel Harrison's people might have listening devices or motion sensors throughout the building. As if summoned by her words, Elena's radio crackled with Colonel Harrison's voice. Captain Blackwood, our monitoring equipment indicates increased activity within the estate. I hope you're not planning anything that could complicate our situation unnecessarily. Elena made a command decision that would either save the mission or end her career. Colonel Harrison, Prince Marcus has agreed to meet with your representative as originally proposed. He'll be visible in the main courtyard in 15 minutes for direct negotiations.
Excellent, Captain. I appreciate your cooperation.
I'll send my aide to conduct the initial meeting. Elena switched to her team's private frequency. All units, the Prince and I are moving to a second-floor observation position in 15 minutes. Alpha and Beta teams, prepare to provide overwatch and be ready to engage hostile forces if negotiations go badly. The Duchess led Elena and Prince Marcus back up the stairs to the main house, which had been transformed by the earlier explosions. Shattered glass covered the marble floors, and several antique tapestries had been torn by debris. But the underlying structure remained sound, and the grand staircase provided access to the upper floors without exposing them to outside observation. Your Highness, Elena said as they climbed the stairs, when Colonel Chen arrives, she's going to be expecting to find you under duress. You'll need to signal that you're acting freely while also making it clear that Colonel Harrison's people represent a threat to national security.
I understand, Captain. But what if Colonel Chen doesn't arrive in time? What if Colonel Harrison's representative realizes we're stalling and decides to storm the vault? Elena checked her equipment one final time as they reached the second floor.
Then, we fight our way out and hope the kingdom survives the political chaos that follows. The observation room the Duchess had mentioned was a masterpiece of defensive architecture disguised as an elegant sitting room. Large windows provided clear views of the courtyard while remaining protected by bulletproof glass that looked like ordinary crystal. Furniture that appeared decorative was actually positioned to provide cover during combat, and what seemed like artwork concealed emergency communications equipment. Elena positioned Prince Marcus where he would be visible from the courtyard while remaining protected from direct fire. Then, she activated the room's communication system and contacted Colonel Chen directly.
Colonel Chen, this is Captain Elena Blackwood of the Royal Guard. Can you confirm receipt of my earlier message?
The response came back immediately, and Elena was relieved to hear the crisp professionalism that had made Colonel Chen one of the kingdom's most respected military officers.
Captain Blackwood, message received and understood. I have a rapid response battalion en route to your location. ETA 15 minutes. Can you confirm the status of Prince Marcus?
Prince Marcus is safe and under my protection, Colonel. But we have a complex situation involving forces claiming to represent the Regency Council. I cannot verify their authority, and their behavior suggests potential hostile intent.
Understood, Captain. My forces are authorized to engage any threats to Prince Marcus's safety. What is your assessment of hostile capabilities?
Elena looked out at the estate grounds, where Colonel Harrison's forces maintained their positions with military precision.
Professional soldiers with military-grade equipment.
Estimated 30 to 40 personnel, with helicopter support and heavy weapons. They're positioned for containment rather than assault, which suggests they want to avoid damaging whatever they're trying to secure.
Copy that, Captain.
Be advised, we're monitoring communications that suggest additional forces may be converging on your location from multiple directions. This operation appears to be larger than your initial assessment indicated." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. If Colonel Chen was detecting additional forces, then Colonel Harrison might have been telling the truth about having legitimate authority. Or someone else entirely was using the confusion to move their own pieces into position for whatever endgame they had planned. "Colonel Chen, what's your source for that intelligence?" Military communications intercepts suggest a second operation targeting the same location. Different command structure, different authorization, but similar objectives. "Captain, I think you may have stumbled into the middle of a much larger conflict." Before Elena could process the implications of that statement, movement in the courtyard below caught her attention. A single figure was walking across the open ground toward the main house, moving with the confidence of someone who believed they controlled the entire situation. Elena raised her night vision scope and studied the approaching person carefully. The man was tall, well-dressed, and carried himself with the bearing of a senior military officer. But something about his appearance nagged at Elena's memory. She had seen this person before, but not in any military context that she could recall. "Prince Marcus," Elena said quietly, "look at the man approaching the house. Do you recognize him?" Prince Marcus studied the figure through the window, then went rigid with shock. "That's not Colonel Harrison's aide. That's Lord Chancellor Hawthorne himself." Elena felt the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place, but not in any pattern she had expected. If Lord Chancellor Hawthorne was here personally, then the operation was far more important to him than a simple treasure recovery. And if he had left the palace while the king was in critical condition, then either the situation was completely under control or he had abandoned his duties to pursue his own agenda. "Your Highness," Elena said urgently, "why would the Lord Chancellor be here personally? Shouldn't he be at the palace managing the Regency Council during your father's medical crisis?" Prince Marcus's expression darkened with realization. "Unless he's not here as the Lord Chancellor. Unless he's here as the person who orchestrated this entire operation." Elena's radio crackled with Colonel Chen's voice. "Captain Blackwood, my advance teams are detecting unusual activity from the forces surrounding your position. It appears they're repositioning to engage a second group approaching from the north. You may have multiple hostile factions converging on your location." Elena looked out at the estate grounds and realized that what had seemed like a siege was actually something far more complex. Colonel Harrison's forces were repositioning to face a new threat, which meant someone else was coming to Raven's Hollow estate with their own agenda for the crown treasures. "All teams," Elena announced, "we have multiple unknown forces approaching our position. Maintain defensive positions and prepare for engagement. Protect Prince Marcus at all costs, and do not allow any unauthorized personnel to access the main house." As Elena finished speaking, the first explosions erupted along the estate's northern perimeter. The battle for the crown treasures was about to begin in earnest, and Elena realized that the survival of the kingdom might depend on decisions made in the next few minutes by people who didn't fully understand the forces they were fighting against. Lord Chancellor Hawthorne reached the main entrance and activated a portable communication device. His voice carried clearly through the observation room's monitoring system. "Prince Marcus, I know you can hear me. We need to discuss the future of the kingdom, and we need to discuss it now. The crown treasures in your possession represent more than ceremonial artifacts. They represent the legitimacy of royal authority itself. And that legitimacy is about to be challenged by forces that neither of us can control individually." Elena looked at Prince Marcus, who was staring down at the man he had trusted as his father's most loyal advisor. "Your Highness," she said quietly, "whatever happens in the next few minutes is going to determine whether you become king in a stable kingdom or inherit a civil war. What are your orders?" Prince Marcus studied the tactical situation developing around Raven's Hollow estate, where three separate military forces were converging on a vault containing the symbols of royal authority. When he spoke, it was with the voice of someone who had accepted the full weight of his destiny. "Captain Blackwood, our primary objective is to ensure that the crown treasures reach the coronation ceremony intact, regardless of which faction claims authority over them tonight. Everything else is secondary to that mission. Elena nodded and began coordinating what would either be the salvation of the kingdom or the most spectacular military disaster in royal history. But, as she watched Lord Chancellor Hawthorne approaching the house while Colonel Chen's forces engaged unknown enemies along the estate's perimeter, she realized that the real battle for the future of the throne was just beginning. The crown treasures waited in their vault below, ancient symbols of legitimate authority that had survived centuries of political upheaval. But, whether they would survive the next hour remained to be seen, and Elena knew that everything she had trained for in 20 years of royal service had prepared her for exactly this moment. The kingdom's future lay in the hands of a young prince, a loyal captain, and 3 priceless artifacts hidden beneath an estate that had become the center of a conflict that would reshape the monarchy forever. Elena's training took over as the situation exploded around Ravenshollow estate. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder, and her radio erupted with reports from teams that were suddenly finding themselves outgunned and surrounded. But 20 years in the Royal Guard had taught her that panic was a luxury she couldn't afford, especially with the heir to the throne standing in what was rapidly becoming a battlefield. "All teams, this is Captain Blackwood," she spoke rapidly into her headset. "We have a code red situation. The estate is under attack by unknown hostile forces. Switch to defensive positions immediately. Protect the prince at all costs." Prince Marcus stepped closer to Elena, his voice calm despite the chaos building around them. "Captain, we need to get to the vault beneath the estate. That's where the real treasures are hidden, and that's what they're really after." The Duchess moved toward a concealed panel Elena hadn't noticed in the wall beside the grand staircase. With practiced efficiency, she activated a hidden mechanism that revealed a doorway leading to what appeared to be a stone staircase descending into darkness. "This way, quickly." The vault was constructed during the Civil War 3 centuries ago. It can withstand anything short of a direct artillery strike. Elena made rapid calculations. Her teams outside were reporting at least 30 hostile fighters approaching from multiple directions. The helicopters suggested military-grade equipment and professional coordination. Whoever was attacking had planned this operation with the same precision Elena's team had used, but with significantly more resources. "Charlie team, we're moving to a secondary location inside the estate," Elena announced. "Alpha and Beta teams, establish a defensive perimeter and buy us time. Use whatever force necessary to prevent hostile entry to the main house." The first explosions came as they reached the hidden staircase. The windows of the entrance hall shattered, raining antique glass across marble floors that had witnessed 300 years of royal history. Elena pushed Prince Marcus toward the stairs while the Duchess led the way with a flashlight that suggested she had prepared for exactly this scenario. "Your Grace," Elena called out as they descended the narrow stone steps, "how many people knew about this vault?" "Officially? 3 people. Myself, Prince Marcus, and the royal treasurer who helped arrange the transfer." "Unofficially?" The Duchess paused to look back at Elena with an expression that suggested the answer was more complicated. "Someone with access to palace communications has been monitoring our planning. They knew we had moved the treasures here within hours of the transfer." The stairs opened into a chamber that took Elena's breath away. The vault beneath Ravenshollow estate was a masterpiece of medieval engineering and modern security technology. Ancient stone walls were reinforced with steel plating, while state-of-the-art surveillance equipment monitored every angle. But most impressive was what the chamber contained. The crown of seasons sat on a velvet cushion in a climate-controlled display case, its ancient gemstones catching the overhead lights like captured starfire. The scepter of divine right rested beside it, its gold surface unmarked by the centuries of royal ceremonies it had witnessed. And, in the center of the vault, protected by what Elena recognized as military-grade security glass, the royal seal of binding waited to fulfill its role in the coronation that would either unite the kingdom or tear it apart. "They're beautiful," Elena said softly, then immediately refocused on tactical concerns. "Your Grace, what are the defensive capabilities of this vault? How long can we hold out if they breach the main house?" "The vault has independent air circulation, emergency communications, and enough supplies for a week," the Duchess replied. "But, Captain, I don't think a siege is what they're planning." "Listen." Elena strained to hear what the Duchess was referring to, then realized what was missing. The sound of gunfire from above had stopped. Her teams outside had been engaged in defensive combat for several minutes, but now the estate had fallen silent except for the distant sound of helicopters maintaining positions overhead.
Alpha Team, report status, Elena spoke into her radio. Static answered her for several seconds before Sergeant Peterson's voice came through, strained but professional. Captain, the hostiles have withdrawn to defensive positions around the perimeter. They're not trying to storm the house.
They're just making sure nobody gets out. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground chamber's temperature.
Beta Team, status?
Same situation here, Captain. They've got us surrounded, but they're not advancing.
It's like they're waiting for something.
Prince Marcus had been examining the security systems while Elena coordinated with her teams. Now he turned to face her with an expression that confirmed her worst fears.
Captain, they're not trying to steal the treasures by force. They're trying to force us to bring the treasures to them.
Sir? The Duchess activated a bank of monitors that showed views of the estate grounds from hidden cameras.
Elena could see the hostile forces clearly now, professional soldiers with military-grade equipment, positioned to contain rather than assault. Multiple helicopters maintained overwatch positions, while ground teams had established a perimeter that turned Raven's Hollow estate into an inescapable fortress. Look at the positioning, Prince Marcus continued. They know we're in the vault. They know we have the treasures.
And they know that eventually, we'll have to come out.
When we do, they'll be waiting.
Elena studied the tactical situation on the monitors.
Prince Marcus was right.
The hostile forces had turned the estate into a trap, but they were the bait as much as the treasures.
Your Highness, do we have any idea who organized this operation? Foreign agents? Political rivals? Criminal organizations?
We have suspicions, the Duchess said quietly.
3 weeks ago, when we first discovered evidence of the planned theft, our investigation led to some disturbing possibilities.
Someone with access to the highest levels of palace security was providing information to outside parties. Someone who knew not just the location of the treasures, but the timing of their movement and the details of our deception plan.
Elena felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. You're talking about a traitor in the royal court.
More than that, Prince Marcus said grimly.
We're talking about someone who wants to prevent the coronation entirely. Without the crown treasures, the ceremony cannot proceed according to ancient law.
Without the ceremony, my claim to the throne remains legally incomplete. And, without a legitimate successor, the kingdom faces a constitutional crisis that could lead to civil war.
The implications hit Elena like a physical blow.
This wasn't just about stolen artifacts or criminal profit. Someone was using the crown treasures as weapons in a plot to destabilize the entire kingdom. The question was whether that someone was acting from inside the royal court or had turned a trusted insider into an unwitting accomplice.
Your Grace, Elena said urgently, who else knew about the vault? Not just the existence of it, but the security codes, the access procedures, the exact location of the treasures? The Duchess hesitated for a moment before answering.
The royal treasurer, as I mentioned.
My head of security, who helped oversee the transfer. And...
She paused, looking at Prince Marcus with obvious reluctance.
Your father insisted that one of his personal advisors be briefed on the operation.
Prince Marcus's expression darkened.
Which advisor? Lord Chancellor Hawthorne. Elena didn't recognize the name, but Prince Marcus's reaction told her everything she needed to know.
His face went pale, and he leaned against the wall as if someone had just delivered devastating news.
Your Highness? Elena asked carefully.
Lord Chancellor Hawthorne has been my father's most trusted advisor for 15 years, Prince Marcus said slowly. He has access to every royal security protocol, every state secret, every plan for the coronation ceremony. If he's been compromised, or if he's working against the crown. Elena's radio crackled with a new transmission that interrupted the prince's analysis.
But this wasn't from one of her teams.
The voice was unfamiliar, speaking with the crisp authority of someone accustomed to giving orders and having them obeyed.
Captain Blackwood, Prince Marcus, Your Grace the Duchess. This is Colonel Harrison of the Royal Security Service. You are currently surrounded by my operatives, and any attempt to leave the estate will result in immediate capture. I propose a negotiation. Elena looked at Prince Marcus and the Duchess, both of whom seemed genuinely surprised by this development. Either they were excellent actors, or Colonel Harrison represented a third party that none of them had anticipated. This is Captain Blackwood, Elena responded carefully. Identify yourself properly and state your authority for this operation. My authority comes directly from His Royal Majesty, Captain. I have been tasked with recovering the crown treasures and ensuring the security of the royal family. I am prepared to offer safe passage for you and your teams in exchange for the immediate surrender of Prince Marcus and the stolen artifacts. Elena felt the situation becoming more complex by the minute. If Colonel Harrison was telling the truth, then the king himself had authorized a separate operation without informing Elena's command structure. But if he was lying, then the hostile forces had found a way to monitor their communications and were using psychological warfare to divide their defense. Colonel Harrison, Prince Marcus spoke directly into Elena's radio. By what authority do you demand my surrender? I am the heir to the throne, and I order you to identify your chain of command. The response came back immediately, but it wasn't what anyone expected. Your Highness, I regret to inform you that His Royal Majesty suffered a severe heart attack 6 hours ago. He is currently in critical condition at the Royal Medical Center. Until his condition stabilizes, the Regency Council has assumed temporary authority. They have authorized my operation to ensure the security of the succession. Elena watched Prince Marcus process this information. If his father was incapacitated, then the political situation was even more delicate than they had realized. The Regency Council would have legitimate authority to act in the king's name, but they would also have their own interests to protect. Some members might see an opportunity to prevent Prince Marcus from taking the throne at all. Your Highness, Elena said quietly, we need to verify this information before making any decisions. For all we know, this could be part of the deception. The Duchess had been working at a computer terminal while they talked, accessing what appeared to be secure government communications. She looked up with an expression that confirmed Elena's worst fears. The news about the king is true. He collapsed during a private meeting this afternoon. The Royal Medical Center has issued a statement about his condition, and the Regency Council has indeed been activated. Prince Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, gathering himself before responding to what Elena recognized as the most crucial decision of his life. When he spoke, it was with the voice of someone who had accepted the weight of royal responsibility. Colonel Harrison, this is Prince Marcus. I acknowledge the authority of the Regency Council during my father's medical crisis. However, I cannot surrender the crown treasures to anyone other than the legitimate government. I propose a compromise. Send a single representative to negotiate directly, someone whose credentials can be independently verified. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Colonel Harrison responded. Your Highness, I appreciate your caution, but time is a critical factor. Every moment the treasures remain unsecured increases the risk to national security. I have orders to complete this operation before dawn. Elena checked her watch. Dawn was less than 4 hours away. Whatever Colonel Harrison's true agenda, he was operating under tight time constraints that suggested coordination with other elements Elena couldn't see. Your Grace, Elena said quietly to the Duchess, is there any way to independently verify Colonel Harrison's identity and authority? Some kind of back-channel communication with the palace or the Regency Council? I'm trying, the Duchess replied, working furiously at her computer terminal. But most palace communications are routed through systems that Colonel Harrison's people could potentially control if they've compromised the right positions. Prince Marcus moved to another bank of monitors that showed aerial views of the estate from satellite feeds. Captain, look at this. Colonel Harrison's forces aren't just surrounding the estate. They've established roadblocks on every approach route for 5 miles in every direction. Whatever they're planning, they're prepared to control the entire area until they get what they want. Elena studied the satellite imagery. The operation was massive, far larger than anything she would have expected for a simple treasure recovery. The scale suggested either genuine national security concerns or a conspiracy with resources that reached far beyond a single rogue advisor. All teams, Elena announced into her radio, maintain defensive positions but do not initiate contact with the surrounding forces unless directly threatened. We need more information before we make any moves. But, even as she spoke, Elena realized that time was working against them. Colonel Harrison's forces controlled the high ground, both literally and figuratively. They had superior numbers, better equipment, and, potentially legitimate authority. Elena's teams were skilled and determined, but they couldn't hold out indefinitely against a well-coordinated siege. The computer terminal chimed softly, and the Duchess looked up with an expression that mixed relief with new concern. "I've made contact with someone in the Palace Communications Center. They're confirming Colonel Harrison's identity and authority, but..." She paused, reading more carefully. "The orders authorizing this operation were issued by the Regency Council 3 hours ago." But Prince Marcus, the person who signed those orders, was Lord Chancellor Hawthorne. Elena felt the pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. Lord Chancellor Hawthorne knew about the vault and the treasures. He had access to the highest levels of palace security. And now he was in a position to issue orders in the king's name while the monarch was incapacitated. Whether he was a traitor working with outside enemies or simply an ambitious politician seizing an opportunity, he had managed to put himself at the center of the succession crisis. "Your Highness," Elena said urgently, "we need to consider the possibility that this entire situation was orchestrated by someone who wanted to put you in exactly this position. Isolated, surrounded, and forced to make decisions that could either legitimize your claim to the throne or destroy it entirely." Prince Marcus nodded slowly. "Captain, how quickly could your teams fight their way out of the estate if we decided to make a run for it?" Elena made rapid tactical assessments. "Against the forces Colonel Harrison has deployed? We might be able to break through the perimeter, but we'd take heavy casualties and we couldn't guarantee your safety. And if they really do have legitimate authority, we'd be committing treason. But if they don't have legitimate authority," the Duchess added quietly, "then surrendering could mean handing the kingdom over to whoever orchestrated this conspiracy." Elena realized they were facing the kind of impossible decision that defined the difference between ordinary soldiers and those trusted with the highest levels of responsibility. Every choice carried enormous risks, and there was no clear path forward that didn't potentially lead to disaster. But, as she studied the monitors showing Colonel Harrison's forces maintaining their positions around the estate, Elena began to see patterns that suggested a different approach might be possible. The hostile forces were positioned to contain, not to assault. They wanted the treasures, but they also seemed determined to avoid a direct confrontation that could result in damage to the artifacts or injury to Prince Marcus. That reluctance to use overwhelming force might be the weakness Elena needed to exploit. But it would require a plan that was either brilliant or suicidal, and she had less than 4 hours to make it work. The morning mist hung thick over Raven's Hollow estate as Captain Elena Blackwood adjusted her tactical vest one final time. The Royal Guard's elite strike team had been planning this operation for 3 weeks, ever since intelligence reports confirmed that the Duchess of Westmere was harboring stolen crown treasures in her sprawling manor house. What should have been a simple diplomatic recovery had turned into something far more dangerous. Elena checked her watch. 0400 hours. The perfect time for a coordinated assault. Behind her, 12 of the kingdom's finest soldiers waited in the shadows of the ancient oak trees that lined the estate's perimeter. Each guard had trained for scenarios like this, but none had expected to storm the home of nobility. The Duchess had crossed a line that even royal blood couldn't protect. "Team Alpha, report status," Elena whispered into her radio headset. The response crackled back immediately. "Perimeter secured, Captain. No movement detected in the East Wing." "Team Beta, status?" "West Wing clear. Infrared shows minimal heat signatures inside. Looks like most of the staff were dismissed yesterday." Elena nodded grimly. The Duchess was clever, she had to give her that. By sending away the innocent servants, she had eliminated potential hostages and witnesses. But it also meant she was preparing for exactly this kind of confrontation.
The intelligence reports suggested she had hired private mercenaries to supplement her personal security detail.
The ancient treasures they were here to recover weren't just valuable artifacts.
The crown of seasons, the scepter of divine right, and the royal seal of binding were essential to the kingdom's upcoming coronation ceremony. Without them, Prince Marcus couldn't be properly crowned, and the succession crisis that had been brewing for months would explode into civil war. The Duchess knew this perfectly well when she had orchestrated their theft from the royal treasury.
Elena's radio crackled again. "Captain, this is Team Charlie. We've got movement in the main house. Looks like armed guards taking positions at the windows."
"Copy that, Charlie. Maintain observation distance. Do not engage until my signal." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Team Alpha would create a diversion at the front gates while Team Beta moved through the servants' quarters in the rear. Meanwhile, Elena would lead Team Charlie directly through the main hall where intelligence suggested the treasures were being held in the Duchess's private study. Speed and coordination were everything. But, as Elena studied the imposing manor house through her night vision scope, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Duchess had been too quiet, too cooperative during the preliminary negotiations. For 3 days, royal diplomats had tried to convince her to return the stolen items voluntarily. She had smiled politely and claimed complete ignorance of any missing treasures. Her performance had been convincing enough that some advisors suggested dropping the matter entirely. Elena knew better. 20 years in the Royal Guard had taught her to trust her instincts, and her instincts were screaming warnings. The Duchess wasn't just hiding stolen property. She was planning something bigger. "All teams, this is Base Command," a new voice broke through her headset. "We've just received updated intelligence. The Prince is en route to your location. ETA 15 minutes. Elena's blood went cold. "Base Command, repeat that message." "Did you say the Prince is coming here?" "Affirmative, Captain. Prince Marcus departed the palace 10 minutes ago with a small escort. He's demanding to handle negotiations personally." "Negative, Base Command. This is a tactical situation. The Prince cannot be allowed into the operational area." "Captain, the Prince has overridden all security protocols. He's coming with or without our approval." Elena cursed under her breath. Prince Marcus was brave, intelligent, and absolutely determined to prove himself worthy of the crown. Those qualities made him an excellent future king and a terrible security risk. If the Duchess was planning an ambush, having the heir to the throne walk directly into danger would turn a recovery mission into a potential regicide. "Change of plans," Elena announced to her teams. "We're moving immediately. Alpha Team, begin your approach now. Beta Team, secure the rear exit routes. Charlie Team, with me. We're going through the front door." The manor house loomed larger as Elena's team moved across the manicured gardens. Every window seemed to hide potential threats, every shadow could conceal an enemy sniper. The intelligence reports had mentioned at least 8 hired mercenaries, but Elena suspected there were more. The Duchess had access to considerable wealth and powerful connections throughout the criminal underworld. As they reached the ornate front doors, Elena paused to examine the entrance. The heavy oak doors were reinforced with iron bands, but the lock mechanism looked standard enough. Her demolitions expert, Sergeant Hayes, was already preparing a small shaped charge when Elena noticed something that made her hold up her hand for silence. The doors were slightly ajar. In 20 years of tactical operations, Elena had learned that obvious traps were usually exactly that, obvious traps. But she had also learned that sometimes the enemy wanted you to think something was a trap when it was actually the safest route forward. The Duchess was playing a complex game, and Elena was beginning to understand that they might all be dancing to her tune. "Sergeant Hayes, belay that explosive," Elena whispered. "We're going in quiet." Elena pushed the door open slowly, her assault rifle ready. The entrance hall of Raven's Hollow Estate was a monument to centuries of wealth and power. Marble columns stretched up to a vaulted ceiling decorated with painted scenes of ancient battles. Tapestries worth more than most people earned in a lifetime hung between portrait galleries of long-dead nobles.
Under different circumstances, Elena might have appreciated the artistry. Tonight, every decorative element was a potential hiding place for hostile forces. The hall was eerily silent. No sound of footsteps, no whispered conversations, no mechanical hum of security systems. Just the soft ticking of an antique grandfather clock and the distant sound of wind through the estate's ancient trees. Charlie team, spread out and maintain visual contact, Elena commanded softly. Watch for tripwires, pressure plates, and motion sensors. The Duchess has had weeks to prepare surprises. They moved through the hall like ghosts, each step carefully placed and thoroughly considered. Elena's point man, Corporal Martinez, was a former Special Forces operator with an almost supernatural ability to detect hidden dangers. When he suddenly raised his fist in the signal for immediate halt, Elena's entire team froze instantly. Martinez pointed toward the grand staircase that dominated the center of the hall. Someone was coming down the steps, moving with the confident stride of someone who owned everything they surveyed. Elena raised her weapon and activated her night vision scope, then lowered it again in surprise. The Duchess of Westmere was walking down the staircase alone, wearing an elegant evening gown that belonged at a royal ball rather than a tactical raid. She moved without hurry, her hands clearly visible and empty of weapons. Behind her came no guards, no mercenaries, no hidden threats that Elena could detect. Just a middle-aged woman in an expensive dress, smiling as if she were greeting expected guests. "Captain Blackwood," the Duchess called out pleasantly. "I've been expecting you. Though I must say, your timing is impeccable. The prince should be arriving shortly, and I do so want everything to be perfect for his visit." Elena kept her weapon trained on the Duchess while her mind raced through possibilities. This was either the most brazen bluff in criminal history, or the Duchess was confident enough in her position to treat the royal guard like invited guests. Neither option suggested good news for the mission's success. "Your Grace," Elena replied formally. "By order of His Royal Majesty, you are commanded to surrender the stolen crown treasures immediately. Comply with this order, and you will be treated with the dignity your rank deserves." The Duchess reached the bottom of the staircase and smoothed her gown with practiced elegance. "Stolen treasures, Captain? I'm afraid there's been some terrible misunderstanding. I have no idea what you're referring to." "Your Grace, we have documented evidence of your involvement in the theft. Satellite imagery shows vehicles leaving the royal treasury and arriving at this estate on the night in question. Financial records trace payments to known criminal organizations through accounts connected to your estate. Witness testimony places your personal staff at the scene during the relevant time frame." Elena was reciting the evidence that had convinced the royal court to authorize this operation, but even as she spoke, she realized how circumstantial it all sounded. Everything pointed toward the Duchess, but nothing provided absolute proof. A skilled lawyer could probably create reasonable doubt about every piece of evidence they had collected. "How fascinating," the Duchess said with apparent genuine interest. "Someone has certainly been busy creating an impressive fiction. Tell me, Captain, have you actually seen these alleged crown treasures here at my estate? We have intelligence suggesting they're in your private study." "Intelligence suggesting," the Duchess repeated thoughtfully. "Not confirming, then. Would you like to inspect my study personally? I assure you, you're welcome to search anywhere you like." Elena's tactical instincts were screaming warnings now. No guilty party invited their accusers to search for evidence. Either the Duchess was innocent, which seemed impossible given the evidence, or she was so confident in her plans that she didn't care if they found the treasures. Both possibilities suggested Elena's team was walking into something far more dangerous than a simple recovery operation. "Charlie team, maintain defensive positions," Elena ordered. "Your Grace, please remain where you are while we conduct our search." "Of course, Captain. Though I should mention that my study is currently occupied. Perhaps you'd like to wait until my guest finishes his business?" Before Elena could ask what guest the Duchess was referring to, the sound of approaching vehicles reached them through the open front doors. Multiple engines, moving fast, with what sounded like a full security escort. Elena checked her watch and cursed silently.
Prince Marcus was arriving exactly on schedule, which meant he was about to walk into a situation that Elena still didn't fully understand. Alpha Team, report status at the front gate. Elena spoke quickly into her radio.
Captain, we've got multiple vehicles approaching.
Looks like royal security escort with the prince's personal guard. They'll be at the front door in less than 2 minutes. Elena made a command decision that would either save the mission or destroy her career. Alpha Team, intercept the prince's escort before they reach the house.
Tell them the area is not secure for royal presence. Use whatever authority necessary to keep them at a safe distance. Copy that, Captain. What about the prince himself?
Do your best to convince him to wait, but don't physically restrain him unless he's in immediate danger.
We can't create a diplomatic incident. The Duchess had been listening to this exchange with obvious amusement. Captain, I'm afraid your Alpha Team will find the prince quite insistent about entering my home.
You see, he's not just here for the treasures.
He's here because I invited him personally.
Elena felt the bottom drop out of her tactical situation.
You invited the prince here? Tonight? Indeed.
You see, Captain, while you've been planning your little military operation, I've been arranging a much more civilized solution to our disagreement. The prince and I are going to have a pleasant conversation about the future of the kingdom, and these alleged missing treasures will be resolved through proper diplomatic channels. The sound of car doors slamming and footsteps on gravel reached them from outside.
Elena had perhaps 30 seconds before Prince Marcus walked through the front doors into whatever trap the Duchess had prepared.
Her teams were in position to handle a straightforward recovery operation, but they weren't prepared for a situation where the heir to the throne was voluntarily entering hostile territory. Your Grace, Elena said urgently, if you've harmed the prince in any way, or if you're planning to use him as leverage in some political scheme, I need to know immediately. My teams are prepared to use lethal force to protect the royal family. Oh, Captain, the Duchess replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, I have no intention of harming Prince Marcus.
Quite the opposite, actually. I'm going to save his life. Before Elena could process that statement, the front doors opened wider and Prince Marcus himself stepped into the entrance hall. He was exactly as Elena remembered from palace briefings, tall, confident, with the kind of natural authority that came from generations of royal breeding. But tonight there was something different about him. He moved with a tension that suggested he knew more about this situation than anyone had told Elena's team. Your Grace, Prince Marcus said formally, nodding to the Duchess before turning his attention to Elena. Captain Blackwood, I appreciate your dedication to protecting the crown treasures, but this matter requires a different approach. Elena found herself in an impossible position.
Her orders were to recover the stolen items and protect the prince. But the prince was ordering her to stand down, while her tactical instincts insisted that everyone in the room was in immediate danger from threats she couldn't identify. Your Royal Highness, Elena said carefully, my teams have intelligence suggesting this location is not secure. I respectfully request that you allow us to complete our operation before beginning any negotiations. Prince Marcus studied Elena's face for a moment, then looked around at her team's defensive positions.
Captain, I'm going to share something with you that wasn't included in your mission briefing.
The crown treasures weren't stolen. They were moved for safekeeping. Elena felt as if someone had just rewritten the laws of physics while she was watching. Sir? 3 weeks ago, we discovered evidence of a planned attack on the royal treasury. Someone was planning to steal the crown treasures during the coronation ceremony, when security would be focused on the public events. Moving them here was a precautionary measure.
But the evidence against the Duchess
was carefully constructed to make it appear that she had stolen them.
We needed everyone, including potential enemies within the palace staff, to believe the treasures were missing and that we were frantically trying to recover them. Elena's mind raced through the implications.
If Prince Marcus was telling the truth, then her entire mission had been an elaborate deception designed to protect the real treasures from the real thieves. But it also meant that someone in the royal court had authorized a military operation against an innocent duchess without informing the officers involved. That level of deception suggested threats far more serious than simple theft. Your Highness, Elena said slowly, if the Duchess is innocent, and if this whole operation was designed to mislead potential enemies, then why are my tactical instincts telling me that we're all still in serious danger? The Duchess and Prince Marcus exchanged a look that confirmed Elena's worst fears. Whatever they had planned, the real operation was just beginning. Because, Captain, the Duchess said quietly, the people who were planning to steal the treasures just realized they'd been deceived. And they're currently surrounding my estate with enough firepower to level everything within a mile radius. As if summoned by her words, the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors began echoing through the night sky above Raven's Hollow estate. Elena's radio immediately erupted with urgent transmissions from her perimeter teams reporting multiple aircraft approaching from all directions, vehicles moving through the estate grounds, and armed figures taking positions throughout the surrounding forest. Elena realized that her mission to storm the Duchess's estate had just become a desperate fight to defend it. And, somewhere in the chaos that was about to engulf them, the real crown treasures were still hidden, waiting to become the prize in a battle that could determine the future of the kingdom itself.